R.R. Martin's letter to his publishers, which was a part of his pitch for Song of Ice and Fire in 1993. It does contain some potentially major spoilers, as in the letter he wrote which 5 characters will survive the events of Game of Thrones, so if you don't want anything spoiled, it's time for you to close this video. Not long ago, fans noticed a tweet from the UK bookseller Waterstones which contained 3 photos of a letter from 1993 that Martin had written outlining the entire series. The tweet has since been deleted, but not before many fans screenshotted the revealing information. In a series known for killing off main characters, you may be relieved to know that some Game of Thrones heroes are safe, or at least they were in George R.R. Martin's original plan for the series. Before I get straight into those letters, let's firstly highlight that Martin, as he stated himself, may not have prepared thorough outlines like some authors, but he still has firm views on exactly where his story is going. He said, "As you know, I don't outline my novels. I find that if I know exactly where a book is going, I lose all interest in writing it. I do, however, have some strong notions as to the overall structure of the story I'm telling, and the eventual fate of many of the principal characters in the drama." He added, "The cast will not always remain the same. Old characters will die and new ones will be introduced. Some of the fatalities will include sympathetic viewpoint characters. So who will live and who will die?" George submitted a general outline for the then planned trilogy A Song of Ice and Fire. The series eventually grew to a now planned set of 7 books and has changed a lot from his starting plot points, but we hope one section of the general plan has remained a part of Martin's overall story. After telling the editorial reviewer that the cast of characters would be ever-changing with lots of unexpected deaths, Martin makes it clear that 5 key protagonists will survive. Of course, this could have changed by now, but back in 1993, Martin listed Daenerys Targaryen, Arya Stark, Jon Snow, Bran Stark, and Tyrion Lannister as the only major characters surviving Game of Thrones. 5 central characters will make it through all 3 volumes, however, growing from children to adults and changing the world and themselves in the process, Martin wrote. "In a sense, my trilogy is almost a generational saga, telling the life stories of these 5 characters, 3 men and 2 women. The 5 key players are Tyrion Lannister, Daenerys Targaryen, and 3 of the children of Winterfell, Arya, Bran, and the bastard Jon Snow. It's worth noting that all of these characters are still alive in the show, which has long passed the events of the book series. So if fans are to be optimistic and take Martin's original word at face value, Tyrion, Daenerys, Arya, Bran, and Jon could survive the entire series. Jon technically died, but was shortly after brought back to life in the television adaptation, something that fans can expect to see in the coming books if the fan theories are correct. Killing him off for a second time would be unlikely. Now let's take a look on what Martin had to say about the Game of Thrones in 1993. Here's the original 3-page outline George R.R. Martin wrote for Game of Thrones. Dear Ralph, here are the first 13 chapters, 170 pages of the high fantasy novel I promised you, which I'm calling A Game of Thrones. When completed, this will be the first volume in what I see as an epic trilogy with the overall title A Song of Ice and Fire. As you know, I don't outline my novels. I find that if I know exactly where a book is going, I lose all interest in writing it. I do, however, have some strong notions as to the overall structure of the story I'm telling and the eventual fate of many of the principal characters in the drama. Roughly speaking, there are 3 major conflicts set in motion in the chapters enclosed. These will form the major plot threads of the trilogy, each other in what should be a complex but exciting. Each of the presents a major threat of my imaginary realm, the 7 kingdoms, and to the live principal characters. The first thread grows from the enmity between the great houses of Lannister and Stark, as it plays out in a cycle of plot, counterplot, ambition, murder, and revenge, with the Iron Throne of the 7 kingdoms as the ultimate prize. This will form the backbone of the first volume of trilogy A Game of Thrones. Where the line of Lannister and Direwolf of Stark snarl and scrap, however, a second and greater threat takes shape across the narrow sea, where the Dothraki horse lords mass their barbarian hordes for a great invasion of the 7 kingdoms, led by the fierce and beautiful Daenerys Stormborn, the last of the Targaryen Dragonlords. The Dothraki invasion will be the central story of my second volume, A Dance with Dragons. The greatest danger of all, however, comes from the north, from the icy wastes beyond the wall, where half-forgotten demons out of legend, inhuman others, raids called legions of the undead, and the never-born and prepared to ride down on the winds of winter to extinguish everything that we would call life. The only thing that stands between the 7 kingdoms and an endless night is the wall, and a handful of men in black called the Night's Watch. Their story will be heart of my 3rd volume, The Winds of Winter. The final battle will also draw together characters and plot threads left from the first 2 books and resolve all in one huge climax. The 13 chapters on hand should give you a notion as to my narrative strategy. All 3 books will feature a complex mosaic of intercutting points of view among various of my large and diverse cast of players. The cast will not always remain the same. Old characters will die and new ones will be introduced. Some of the fatalities will include sympathetic viewpoint characters. I want the reader to feel that no one is ever completely safe, not even the characters who seem to be the heroes. The suspense always ratchets up a notch when you know that any character can die at any time. 5 central characters will make it through all 3 volumes, however, growing from children to adults and changing the world and themselves in the process. In a sense, my trilogy is almost a generational saga, telling the life stories of these 5 characters, 3 men and 2 women. The 5 key players are Tyrion Lannister, Daenerys Targaryen, and 3 of the children of Winterfell, Arya Bran, and the bastard Jon Snow. All of them are introduced at some length in the chapters you have to hand. This is going to be, I hope, quite an epic. Epic in its scale, epic in its action, and epic in its length. I see all 3 volumes as big books running about 700 to 800 manuscript pages, so things are just barely getting underway in the 13 chapters I've sent you. I have quite a clear notion of how the story is going to unfold in the first volume of Game of Thrones. Things will get a lot worse for the poor Starks before they get better, I'm afraid. Lord Eddard Stark and his wife, Catelyn Tully, are both doomed and will perish at the hands of their enemies. Ned will discover what happened to his friend Jon R.R, can act on his knowledge, will have an unfortunate accident, and the throne will, too, embroil Joffrey, still a minor. Joffrey will not be sympathetic, and Ned, what appears to say, will be accused of treason. But before he's taken, he will help his wife and his daughter Arya escape back to Winterfell. Each of the contending families will learn it has a member of dubious loyalty in its midst. Sansa Stark, wed to Joffrey Baratheon, will bear him a son, the heir to the throne, and when the crunch comes, she will choose her husband and child over her parents and siblings, a choice she will later bitterly rue. Tyrion Lannister, meanwhile, will befriend both Sansa and her sister Arya, while growing more and more disenchanted with his own family. Young Bran will come out of his coma after a strange prophetic dream, only to discover that he will never walk again. He will turn to magic at first in the hope of restoring his legs, but later for its own sake. When his father Eddard Stark is executed, Bran will see the shape of doom descending on all of them, but nothing he can say will stop his brother Robb from calling the banners in rebellion. All the North will be inflamed by war. Robb will win several splendid victories and maim Joffrey Baratheon on the battlefield, but in the end he will not be able to stand against Jaime and Tyrion Lannister and their allies. Robb Stark will die in battle and Tyrion Lannister will besiege and burn Winterfell. Jon Snow the Bastard will remain in the far north. He will mature into a ranger of great daring and ultimately will succeed his uncle as the commander of the Night's Watch. When Winterfell burns, Catelyn Stark will be forced to flee north with her son Bran and her daughter Arya. Wounded by Lannister riders, they will seek refuge at the Wall, but the men of the Night's Watch give up their families when they take the Black, and Jon and Benjen will not be able to help to Jon's anguish. It will lead to a bitter estrangement between Jon and Bran. Arya will be more forgiving until she realizes with terror that she has fallen in love with Jon, who is not only her half-brother but a man of the Night's Watch sworn to celibacy. Their passion will continue to torment Jon and Arya throughout the trilogy until the secret of Jon's true parentage is finally revealed in the last book. Abandoned by the Night's Watch, Catelyn and her children will find their only hope of safety lies even further north beyond the Wall, where they fall into the hands of Mance Rayder, the king beyond the Wall, and get a dreadful glimpse of the inhuman others as they attack the wilding encampment. Bran's magic, Arya's sword needle, and the savagery of their direwolves will help them survive, but their mother Catelyn will die at the hands of the others. Over across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen will discover that her new husband, the Dothraki Khal Drogo, has little interest in invading the Seven Kingdoms, much to her brother's frustration. When Viserys presses his claims past the point of tact or wisdom, Khal Drogo will finally grow annoyed and kill him out of hand, eliminating the Targaryen pretender and leaving Daenerys as the last of her line. Daenerys will bide her time, but she will not forget. When the moment is right, she will kill her husband to avenge her brother and then flee with a trusted friend into the wilderness beyond Waze Dothrak. There, hunted by of her life, she stumbles on something about dragon eggs. A young dragon will give Daenerys bend to her will. Then she begins to plan for her invasion of the Seven Kingdoms. Tyrion Lannister will continue to travel, to plot, and to play the Game of Thrones, finally removing his nephew Joffrey in disgust at the Boy King's brutality. Jaime Lannister will follow Joffrey on the throne of the Seven Kingdoms, by the simple expedient of killing everyone ahead of him in the line of succession and blaming his brother Tyrion for the murders. Exiled, Tyrion will change sides, making common cause with the surviving Starks to bring his brother down and falling helplessly in love with Arya Stark while he's at it. His passion is, alas, unreciprocated, but no less intense for that, and it will lead to a deadly rivalry between Tyrion and Jon Snow. The next graph is blocked out. But that's the second book. I hope you will find some who are as excited about all of this as I am. Feel free to share this letter with anyone who wants to know how the story will go. All best, George R.R. Martin. From the initial 3 novels, the series will now end with 7. Obviously, many of Martin's plans for the novels may have changed since then, but if you follow both the books and the show, the 5 characters George said would survive the Game of Thrones seems to wear the most plot armor. The more important part is that all these 5 characters are still very important for the plot development. Fans will be thrilled to know that he fully intended 5 major fictional favorites to survive, although this leaves the fate of some others hanging precariously in the balance. Some of the most loved characters such as Sansa Stark and Jaime Lannister would in this case most likely die, as Game of Thrones ending without at least half of the main characters dying would not be the bittersweet ending we've been promised.